In Washington today, a House committee will hold a hearing on decriminalizing marijuana. This could be a big win for pot ETFs, allowing the funds to attract billions in new assets from banks that currently cannot invest while cannabis is illegal at the federal level. Joining us now, Kristoffer Inton, Director of Basic Materials and Equity Research at Morningstar. He just wrote a report initiating coverage on 6 cannabis stocks. Kristoffer, great to have you with us.
Thank you for having me. Good morning.
You know, there's so many glowing projections about what this total market could be. And off of those projections, we say so far it's only penetrated this percent, 8%, 6% of the cannabis market. What is the total projection built on? How can we better understand that? Is there an assumption that every dollar in the illegal market will be converted to the legal market, and that is what the total addressable market is?
Yes, I think that's part of it. I think you have to understand that the black market is quite large already. And so for the growth in the market, the demand already exists. It's simply just converting it. And the legal market offers advantages that the black market doesn't in terms of quality, ease of access, and other things like that. On top of that, I would also add that what we generally see in states that have legalized is that there's a boost in consumption rates. Consumers that would have never consumed cannabis prior to legalization start trying it after it is legalized. So you actually have some of that effect as well.
Is that the predominant experience that you've seen in terms of what you've seen in those states, or are there more states like California, for instance, where, you know, when you take a look at the tax revenues received last year in 2018, they fell well short of what had been projected because of a very robust illegal market?
So what I would say about what happened in California is that states and countries that have legalized, they're still learning how this works. And California was pretty aggressive on the excise tax that consumers would pay. And so naturally, the black market almost serves as a price ceiling to the market. The demand will still come to the legal market if you don't get too greedy about how much taxes you're trying to charge the consumer.
Let's walk through some of your picks here, Kristoffer, and I'm wondering how you sort of think one is better than the other at this point in such a nascent industry. What sorts of catalysts do you think will power the most growth?
Sure. 2 of our top picks are Canopy Growth and Curaleaf. So Canopy Growth is a Canadian producer with a big strategic investment from Constellation Brands. They also have a standing agreement to acquire U.S.-based acreage holdings upon a change to the U.S. federal law on cannabis. We really like both of those aspects of Canopy. One, the partnership with Constellation gives them exposure to helping develop cannabis-infused drinks and food for the consumer market later down the road. And then, moreover, that deal to acquire U.S. operations immediately upon a change at the federal level is great. We think the U.S. market is the biggest and most attractive cannabis market going forward. And so that exposure for a Canadian producer is rare given the illegality at the U.S. federal level. Similarly, we like Curaleaf because it is a U.S. pure play. Again, because the U.S. is going to be the biggest and best market, investors looking for the exposure to that market get it through Curaleaf. We also like Aurora Cannabis. Mm-hmm. So Aurora Cannabis is interesting because of the major Canadian producers, they're the only one that doesn't have a major strategic partner outside of cannabis. And so that's a potential catalyst if they can find a good partner that helps them develop the product.
Kristoffer, it's Jason Trennert. You mentioned change at the federal level. Marijuana is still a Class 1 narcotic at the federal level. Mm-hmm. And is there any indication that the Trump administration is going to change its attitude towards cannabis?
I think so. So the president has been open to the States Act proposal that has been put forward by Senator Cory Gardner, a Republican out of Colorado, and Elizabeth Warren. And so that bill actually has bipartisan support. And that would allow states to simply recognize the state's rights to choose the legality. If you're a state that wants to keep it illegal, you're free to do so. If you're a state that wants to legalize recreational, you're also free to do so. And we think that type of legislation is the most likely that's going to pass.
That would still not allow most institutions from participating in this trade, though, Kristoffer, correct?
Sorry, what was that?
I mean, if it were up to the states and it wasn't deschedulized on a federal level, that would still bar a lot of institutions from buying any of these companies.
No, sorry. What we mean is that At the federal level, it would be removed from Schedule 1, but it would
okay.
still recognize states, a state law that would make it illegal if a state chose to do so.
With the excitement, as we kind of handicap the prospects for legalization and all the rest, dial it forward. What does this industry look like in a mature state? I mean, we're talking about just agribusinesses. Is it going to be Archer Daniels Midland trading at 14 times earnings with a 3% dividend yield? In other words, where's the excitement long term for the actual business in this area?
Sure. I think you're right. I think when you look at the cannabis companies now, they all look sort of similar. They're all pretty much cultivators primarily. I think what you see 10 years down the road or further is that there's going to be a divergence of what they look like. There's going to be companies that remain and focus on the cultivation aspect and maybe do look like an ADM. But then you also have the emergence of companies that are focused on the consumer aspect of the market. So more of a consumer packaged goods types companies that are focused on that end market. And then potentially also companies that are focused primarily on the medical market.